So, one of my viewers came up with, a regular guy who's there for most of my vids at least, came up with a suggestion, which was sort of a behind the scenes type of video of what I do to between deciding on playing a game, how I prep, and all that for getting it up there. The truth of the matter is there's no singular thing. So anyway, I mean, the first thought I had was some sort of documentary type appearance here where, it would be great if I had somebody who could run the video for me and do an overlay of narration. The same thing could be done. I could do it myself by kind of faking it, right? And I had these images of me sitting on the toilet reading the rules or in the tub or whatever. The problem is almost anything like that would be essentially faked and not really representative of the whole flavor of what actually kind of happens. What actually generally happens is I'm in the midst of playing something, I'm getting towards the end, and I start thinking about what do I want to play next. Now, when I'm in a really hyper state of gaming, which maybe I'm entering into, we can always hope, as in being better than other things that I might be doing. This tends to get more compressed, but and I forced myself into the situation a little bit more. But what ends up generally happening is I'm getting towards the end of something and I start thinking, well, what am I going to do next? And there's a few places that I go to come up with an answer like that. One is the infamous short list, which is just games that are on my mind that I absolutely know that I haven't covered yet. And they're on my mind because they either express something important in the hobby or to me, or I've really liked them. And, we've got stuff like the recent Nations in Arms was up there on that list because I wanted to explore that. Empires in Arms is another one, which is on that list because I've got such a history with it, etc. The short list isn't very short, but it's a lot shorter than, my normal, my request list over on BGG. Another common source for what to choose is, I just bought this. That's what's going to hit me in the next one. At least, if things don't change extensively over the next day or so when I'm playing Naseby from the Musket and Pike. Hey, I know I haven't done this, and cool, let's just get to it. Part of the problem is that there are a lot of games that I think about, and I'm not sure if I've done them or not. And obviously I can go look that up. The kind of weird thing why I'm doing Musket and Pike again now is because a couple fell off my radar, and I thought I had covered all of Musket and Pike, but it turns out the English Civil War and Under the Lily Banners I had not gotten to. I'm actually really surprised with This Accursed Civil War, because I thought I had covered it because I played a scenario of it with my past wife at the time when we were still playing games and whatnot. And she was still a functioning person to some extent. Anyway, I gotta switch pipes. I'll be back. One thing I like to do is I like to kind of mix things up, right? In terms of period, scale, even type of game. So, I've been doing a lot of military games recently. I want to do something non-military. There is a problem with that, which is that, and I've got something that's kind of non-military coming up. But in terms of, I know I've got at least a couple of people who like me covering economic stuff. Um, some of whom just want me to do 18xx's. Fine, it's got its own fan base. But others who are very interested in me covering, a broader span of games that have a lot of economics in them, especially the economic simulations. That's an area like political sims that I really really like, but I don't have a hell of a lot of games that I think qualify. And honestly, I don't know if there are a hell of a lot. Right? The 18xx model I've covered, and now it's just looking at different ones within that model, and I don't have a lot left, to be honest, but looking at different ones within that model and seeing what are they doing that's a little different, what does this cover. Most of them don't really add much in terms of the economic flavor. I think maybe the last big one that I saw with that was 1817 or whatever, the one that had a lot of weird funding going on in it. And the Euros, which tend to be economic, don't feel like real economic models in any sense of the word. They feel absolutely gamey to me. So I just don't tend to feel like when I'm playing a Euro that I'm doing something that relies heavily on the price of goods and stuff like that in the same way. You can make the same argument with roll and move games like Monopoly or whatever. They may have an economics to them, but they're more about the game than they are about any kind of economic model. So there isn't much left for me to dredge up, and what might be still out there that I've got, I've either covered something very much like it, or I'm not sure whether or not I've covered it yet. I'm looking at one that I know I haven't right now. I'm like, wow, maybe that should get escalated, even though I have no idea why I picked it up or whatever. So a lot of it is really kind of based on, what's just on my mind at the moment that I decide I need to find a new game. At other times, especially when I'm looking for a non-military game, and this happened with Source of the Nile, I'll look at my request list and try to find something that is different, that has a lot of votes for it, that I'm willing to tackle. There's sort of there's a lot of the games that have the highest number on there, I've got sort of I don't really feel like getting up to this. Some of them are real monsters. Some of them are ones where I have to play a lot of scenarios, like Combat Commander, and I've kind of gotten burned trying to get into Combat Commander to prep for it. And that can happen, right? I make a decision to play a game, and I start reading it or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just really not into this, or try setting up a scenario, and I'm like, yeah, I can't cope with the pieces the way this Accursed Civil War kind of had a piece issue. I've got that same issue with Combat Commander. Once I make that decision, though, it's not stuck in stone. But once I make that, because sometimes I'll read the rules and get all prepped, and then the long game that I'm playing takes longer than I thought, and those rules kind of drift away, and I get to something else. Once I've made that, and that happened with Sekigahara, which I'm not going to be playing, but I had made the decision to play before I made the decision to play the Musket and Pike, and then I'm like, yeah, if I got to read one rules, I'll reread these, because I feel like I know I'm going to enjoy doing that again. And somebody brought that to my attention, that I hadn't played a couple of the M&P games. Always kind of focused back there is, I haven't finished the Great Battles of Alexander the Great either. I did all the base game ones, but some of the expansions I think I haven't hit yet. Although I got the India, I think it's the successors ones I haven't completely hit. Although I think I did some of them. I don't think I have much left in it, but I know that I have stuff left in it, and I really should go back to that, along with a lot of other GBOH games that I just haven't covered at all, sadly enough. The 18XX, I have a couple left. And there's kind of this feeling of, yeah, but I really, really want to be in the mood for 18XX to play one of those few that I have remaining. Like, I want to be really, really, like, excited about it to hit one of them. And I also am not so sure which ones I haven't played, which is, again, a problem that regularly strikes me. I see India, the 18 India, the GMT. I know I haven't played that. And I know that there's at least one of the more complex kind of off ones. Did I do 1883? I think I did. I don't know. I have a few left that I don't want to play. Magazine games tend to get really short shift from me. I've played most of the ones that I remember really liking from my childhood, right? Well, or early days in gaming as well. And they're not as easily visible to me. And I have to hunt them in my file cabinet and shit like that. So there's a lot of problems with them. And they don't tend to get a lot of votes either. By the way, I had a friend who was supposed to send me a whole bunch of Decision games. I don't know what happened. This is a weird thing that happens in my life, where I think somehow I answered things in a way that he decided he couldn't understand if I wanted any. I thought I had asked for, one of everything basically that, could be mailed easily, which is to say none of the big boxed games, but any folios and magazine games. And I got, it sort of died out, and then I didn't see him for a while, so I thought maybe he either felt guilty about that or something happened in his health. And now I'm like confused because he just responded to something on Facebook. I'm assuming I just confused him with my answers. That happens relatively often for me. I think I'm completely clear. That happened with my screens. Why I never got my screens replaced, I think. I had somebody come out and I don't know. Weird shit happened. But it also fitted into it this idea of, wow, I don't want to reach out and ask if he's okay, and I don't want to ask about those games, because I don't want, it was a favor he was doing for me or whatever, and like, I don't really care that much. I have plenty of games. It was just, they were such a good deal, like at $1 a game, that I'm like, yeah, the shipping costs at that they end up being a pretty good deal, and I was kind of interested in looking at some of the Decision games because I've heard good things about their well, I've heard people say that they're not as bad as they used to be. I haven't heard really great things about them, but anyway, at $1 each, that puts them in the range that, like, wow, that's as cheap as S&Ts used to be, right? I'll go for that. Even though I probably just don't have time to get to them. Okay, so after I make that decision to play a game and maybe don't rescind it, while I'm playing another game, or after I'm done, because sometimes, that's where it gets to, I start reading the rules. And I generally make that, hey, I'm sitting out on the porch drinking while I read the rules, or even just tea, I mean, whatever. Or on my bean bags, I used to do that more. I kind of think I'm getting back into it again, where I'm just, relaxing and maybe kind of not fully not like studying real hard, because I don't really do that, but kind of as a form of relaxation or whatever, and I don't expect to get the rules very well. I know I'll catch up on them when I do the rules introduction and get in better shape. Now, with M&P, I didn't get that second reaction because I'm returning to a system that I've already done the introduction to. And I feel like, yeah, the refresher, I knew it wasn't going to be enough, but it should be close enough to enough. Um, if I get to a point where, yeah, and then another opportunity is I sit on the crapper and I read, and then I take a bath immediately after every time I take a shit. So I also read there, and at some points I have to read the rules. I have to start focusing a little bit more. Like I'm coming to the end of something and I'm just like, yeah, okay. Now I'll sit out on the porch and make sure I get through these instead of reading other things. The next thing I'm doing is fairly light, and then I expect to get to more musket and pike. So I kind of don't feel like I needed to work too hard on the rules, but I did it all out on the porch actually, instead of reading. I'm reading a paperback in the bathroom instead. Um, and then if I have to sort, well, clipping counters. There was a time when I had to. Hold on, let me just. I want to check how much battery I have, and the only way is by stopping it on this damn camera. It doesn't give me until it's almost dead. Clipping counters was something that fitted in. Every now and then I would come across a game that I hadn't clipped yet. Or if I got a new game and I was excited about it, I would have to clip it. The last time that happened to me was, the Marlboro one, Banish All Their Fears, that I did recently. That I had to clip before I could play it. For the most part, clipping and prepping a game has already been done at this point. Like, there might be a game or two in there that are kicking around that I find, ooh, I haven't prepped this at all. In which case, that also fits in. Nowadays, so when I first started doing these videos, I was clipping a lot of counters because I was acquiring a lot of games at that point. And I just had, whenever I was brewing tea, or every now and then if I went into the kitchen to do something or whatever, I would clip a couple of counters. When I was boiling tea, I would clip counters while the water was boiling. I had, a news show on or whatever in the same room because that's where I worked and everything, so my computer was set up in there. When I moved here, most of my counters were already clipped, and I've been doing it sitting at what was my desk in my bedroom now, while I watch videos instead. And it's kind of, the same way that like playing a computer game or something while I watch videos, well, something like Raid, was possible. I do the clipping at the same time because watching videos has sort of become not so much a noise in the background as the actual like major activity that I'm trying to find something to justify me doing since I stopped working. But anyway, so for the most part, everything's prepped already, sorted into bags. I do have to sort the counters though, which I take my counter tray, and again, while watching videos or whatever, I do that. Usually doesn't take a hell of a lot of time. And then, I mean, I may if it's a flat map that's kind of poochy or whatever, at some point or another, I've got games, stacked on top of it to flatten it out and make it a little easier to cope with in that sense. And then I just dig in, what else you see during the actual play and during the reading of the rules, that is more or less everything there. That's what I can't give you here, is this sort of an example of me doing it. I mean, again, I had this, Well, you'd see me sitting and reading, and then putting it down and staring at the sky because I got bored of reading for a while, and then reading some more, you know. And I read in little portions, you know, again, and really the only real focused reading is when I do the rules in front of you. The decision making is all, it's so amorphous, it really is. Uh, and it's one reason I like coming down here to play sometimes, because I'm seeing different games that I don't see all the time when I'm up in the loft where all the war games are. Of course, what I don't see ever is all the magazine games because they're in a file cabinet. Some of them come to mind every now and then, but it's pretty seldom that they really stick enough that I want to do them. Uh, and I guess that's about it, really. You know, I mean, it's just not that exciting, which is why I never thought of doing it. But if somebody wanted to ask about it, well, maybe other people were somewhat interested in what the process was like. Uh, but it really isn't a process, right? Unlike, you know, the read the rules introduction, play the game as much as I can, and then give a review if I haven't, reviewed that before. The intro and the review are only, or don't happen so much in series games. I don't have a fixed, clear process for it. I just, especially in the decision making side of it, it's just like whatever hits my fancy at that time. And sometimes I force myself, yeah, I should find something, on the request list that has a lot of votes. And then I look through it, and I generally I'm just like, nah, 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 nah. I don't want to face that. I mean, I don't want to face the 60-hour Empires in Arms, or the degree of difficulty that I'm going to have with, say, Pacific War, or with Combat Commander. These are the things that have the most votes. And then I look down through, and I hit a GBOH or an OCS game, and I'm like, I've done a lot of them. That's not, so I get to the middle low end of the pack before I start finding things. And then the first one that kind of hits my fancy, and I say, yeah, I could do that. Yeah. For some reason, the Gulf Strike is constantly on my short list, but I don't want to face it, so it just doesn't come up. Central America, same kind of thing, although I did that one. I don't know. Anyway, thought I'd try to answer the question as best as I could, because I don't feel like just watching videos right now, and I also didn't feel like playing right away.